All right, let's get into what our listeners want us to talk about, which includes the Padres, but also the Aztecs and the Broncos. I mean, you know it because you cover it. You talk about it every day like I talk about it every day. It's a weird spot a little bit. Wouldn't you agree, BJ? Like middle of February, this collision course where you got like a must-win game for two teams. I mean, I think you could make the argument San Diego State doesn't, quote-unquote, have to, but the path gets real narrow. I don't know if you could make the argument that Boise State doesn't, quote-unquote, have to win this game for an at-large berth. So how do you see this one?
No, I mean, they're on the peripheral of the at-large. They probably need to go 6-1 in these final 7 games to have any kind of real argument. But I think any bracketologist you talk to, any kind of bracket prognosticator, they don't really see a path for Boise State if they don't win this game. They don't have a lot of good road wins. They lost at all the tough road venues they've been to. I guess UNLV might be considered their best road win at this point, which isn't saying much. Right. So I think that certainly to get a quad 1 win on the road at San Diego State would be massive for them. I mean, they actually have, I know the overall better win. Obviously, San Diego State has it, but you look at the net rankings, like Boise State is the only team in the conference that has 2 wins against teams in the top 27 of the net. They beat Clemson and they beat St. Mary's, and the St. Mary's win was neutral site. So, I mean, they actually have like a decent, couple of wins on their resume, but they also have a horrible loss to Boston College. It was in the championship game of a tournament down in the Cayman Islands. So overall, their resume is just not good enough right now, probably. But if they could somehow go 6-1 down the stretch here and include a win over San Diego State and no like terrible losses to Fresno or Air Force, they're going to at least have a chance. And but certainly that I think any at-large talk won't seriously pick up unless they find a way to win on Saturday.
Last time San Diego State played Boise on the road, good game. San Diego State pulled out with a victory. Miles Byrd was fantastic in that game. But before that game, Boise State has had success against San Diego State. What's it been the reason why they've had this recent success? Take away the last game against San Diego State.
I don't really know, to be honest. They just had such great games. I mean, Max Rice obviously had a lot to do with that. He went crazy in that game on senior night in Boise a couple of years ago, and then threw in the crazy shot last year at Viejas from like almost half court as the shot clock was going down. I'm not sure what it is. Boise State's just typically has some veteran players that maybe don't get phased as much in some at Viejas Arena as some other teams maybe do, and they've obviously played them pretty well. In Boise, I think they had won like 5 out of 6 or something in Boise before that last game earlier this year. But typically Boise State, their advantage is on the rebounding, on the glass, and defensively. And if it's a lower scoring game, like it typically is against San Diego State in years past, Boise State's been built to kind of win those kind of games. So it's just been a decent matchup for them in recent years. But obviously up here in Boise a couple weeks ago, Boise State gave up 15 offensive rebounds, 21 second chance points to San Diego State. And Brian Dutcher, said after the game to me and Mark Ziegler, like, yeah, we just flipped the script on them and did to them what they usually do to us. And so Boise State knows that it's going to come down to rebounding and defense in this one. And they just cannot, Boise State's the number 2 defensive rebounding team in the country. I mean, they literally rank number 2 in the country in terms of opponents' percentage shots they get back. And so they're one of the best in the country, or the best in the country. And for whatever reason against San Diego State, they gave up 15 offensive rebounds, and like I said, 21 second chance points, and it cost them. So it's pretty simple for Boise State on Saturday. Rebound the ball, don't give up offensive rebounds and second chance points. And if they can do that, they feel like they'll have a pretty good chance to win.
PJ Raines, Bronco Nation News, with us right now on John and Jim. You compare them out west to where it was a year ago. Obviously, they're nowhere close to getting 6 teams into the NCAA tournament. That was a once in a generation type year. But I would argue the league's, it's been very good. I don't even know if I expected it to be this good. Now, ultimately, I don't know how many teams they get in. Maybe it's 2, maybe it's 3, maybe there's an outside shot and more than that. But what do you make of the league this year overall and comparing it to last year?
Well, I'll tell you what, whoever wins the league and gets first place and has to play that 11 a.m. game on Thursday, their reward is going to be maybe playing either San Jose State or Wyoming.
Right.
I mean, that's a scary proposition right there with what both those teams can do if they light it up. So I think Nevada, I think UNLV, I think some of these teams could come up and get anybody on any given day. I mean, they've all shown they can do it. So maybe it's not quite as top heavy in terms of the out of conference wins and the quad 1 wins and a lot of the quad wins that the conference got last year in league that turned out the committee didn't care about. But I mean, I those just aren't there as much. So some of the metrics aren't quite there where they've been. But I mean, it's you look at the top 3, 4, 5 teams. I mean, they're all teams that certainly could compete outside the conference on a national level if given the opportunity and something like the tournament. So I agree with you. I mean, obviously Fresno, Air Force, as bad as can be, but I still think the middle might be, in the third of 4 tiers, I guess, in that Nevada, San Jose, Wyoming range is still better than maybe some people give credit for. So I think it's just the lack of computer metrics, the lack of quad 1 wins that are holding the league down from that standpoint. But I mean, you look up and there's still the 6th ranked league at Ken Palm. They still have, some really nice out of conference wins. And I think, trending towards getting 3 teams in the tournament. I mean, yeah, it's not what it was last year, but I still think it's a quality league, and there's not a lot of easy nights in this league.
The Aztecs are a very young team, one of the youngest teams Dutch has ever coached here at San Diego State, but they have a lot of talent. What do you make of all the young talent on this Aztec roster?
Well, I mean, when I talked to Brian Dutcher over the summer, I write the Big 12, or I do the Big 12 also, but I do the Mountain West stories for Lindy's magazine. And I talked to all the head coaches for Lindy's magazine in June. And when I talked to Brian Dutcher on the phone, I was going into that conversation with a lot of people thinking San Diego State was going to be, 5th, 6th, 7th in the conference. Didn't look like they had a ton of great additions in the portal. They had lost, so many guys to last year's team. And so I kind of wasn't sure what to make of them. And when I got off the phone with Brian Dutcher, I moved them up 4 spots in my rankings. I think I had him 3rd or 4th. I mean, just because of how excited he was. And you think about the track record he has, and if he's telling you that he really likes some of these players, Magoon Guas of the world, and nobody knew who they were, you just had to assume and take his word for it. It's proven to be true. I mean, Magoon Guas looks like an NBA player, looks like a star. And you mentioned Miles Bird and the improvement that he's made, and some of the other guys kind of fitting in, to their roles, Nick Boyd, and some of these guys. So I've been impressed with them. I mean, I know some of the scores obviously are a little closer than people would have wanted. Maybe hasn't helped the metrics of the world, in terms of not getting the big wins over the teams you're supposed to beat. But I mean, as bad as it is to fall behind by 17, it's even more impressive to find a way to come back and win some of these games. So they've been, they've got the pedigree, they've got the coaching, they've got the history and tradition. I mean, in the end, you always know San Diego State's going to be right there when it matters, and I don't think it's going to be any different this year.
It's kind of amazing, and I know you've been watching because I've seen what you've been putting on social media. I think they've had, 4 runs of 17-0 or better in conference play, and they've only done that one other time ever, and they went 30-2 in 2019-20. I think never had they had more than one of those runs in a season, a 17-0 run or better. They've never done more than once. They've done it 4 times, and by the way, they've needed it. It's not like they've used those 17-0 runs in 99-49 wins. Like, they've needed those runs. They've come at just the right time. What's it been like to see how that's played out, right? Because you typically think youth, all right, well, with a young team, that's not going to set you up to go on a 17-0 run when you trail by 17 points in the second half. But for whatever reason, they've been able to kind of pull that rabbit out of a hat.
Well, to be completely honest with you, me and some of my friends have profited off of it. I mean, I obviously don't wager on Boise State games or games that I'm covering for obvious reasons. But if I'm sitting there on a Wednesday night watching a game with some buddies, I'm known to throw $20 down or something. And some of these games where San Diego State has gotten down huge numbers at home, I mean, you were getting some great odds for them to come back and win those games. And so it's been really impressive to watch. I mean, they're obviously never out of a game. Some of these runs they've had, just how quickly they turned around that game at. A lot of the ones at home you expected them to win. The other night at San Jose, I just didn't have a great feeling about that. When you're down 17 at the half, and in that building, we've all been to it. It's just sleepy. It's bad, and it's just not the same as getting the crowd behind you to come back. When you're at Viejas. So for them to erase the 17-point lead before the first media timeout. I mean, that was one of the craziest things I've ever seen. So. Like I said, I know the scores haven't looked great and they've gotten down and it's been ugly, but I mean, the final score is all that matters and who wins the game. And they've been super impressive. And like I said, in the end, I think anybody that counts out San Diego State in a game, in a season, in a conference, you're dumb. I mean, they're just always going to be there. And that's why I think, when it all comes to, at the end of the season, I think San Diego State's going to be right there in the NCAA tournament and a team that nobody's going to want to play in the conference tournament. And their pieces are starting to come together. And like I said, for Boise State fans or other people around the league, they may not have the household names they've had in the past and 3, 4, 5 year starters, but Dutch is getting them going, and I think when it's all said and done down the stretch here, I don't see them losing a ton of games.
I think it might be under the radar, but I think it's been one of the better series in the West. San Diego State and Boise State over the years. I mean, Boise's been very good. They've gotten into a lot of NCAA tournaments, and San Diego State, as we know, has been very good as well. And it'll continue, by the way, beyond next year, because these teams are heading for the Pac-12 together, which I think is good for college basketball as well. So, BJ, we're looking forward to it, man. Travel safe. We'll see you Saturday at Viejas Arena for what should be another really good game.
Yeah, it's dumping snow right here in Boise, so I'm excited to get out. I just hope I heard it was raining down there.
It's been pouring, man. I mean, we didn't have rain for a year. We didn't have rain for a legit year.
Get some sun by tomorrow at 4 o'clock so I can get out to my favorite beach spot and watch the sunset.
We'll work on that.
We'll try.
Thank
We'll ask for you.
Thanks, Pete. We'll see you Saturday.
Thank you.
All right. BJ Rains, Bronco Nation News.